Hi, Karl Griggs, CPC Finance, and today I'm here with one of the partners of Savoys Group, Malkit Purewal. Malkit, if you'd introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Malkit Purewal, one half of Savoys Properties, along with Sanjay Kumar. I've been in the property industry for 23 years. Started off with single buy-to-lets, progressed on to HMOs, and then in 2013 we started with the commercial to residential. And those are the two main strategies we now deployed. So commercial, residential, and HMOs, and sometimes we even mix both of them together.
I know Sanjay was involved originally in his family business, but what's your background before properties?
So I actually come from a business management degree background. In the late 90s, there was a dot-com boom going on, so I retrained, got a computer science master's, and then basically ventured into becoming a software developer analyst, and I did that for 18 years. But while I was actually working, I noticed people got made redundant. I actually got made redundant myself twice during those 18 years. And this is where I realized very early on in 2001 that I actually need a side hustle. And this is where my property journey started when I purchased with Sanjay a 2-bedroom mid-terraced house in Hillingdon.
With the growth that you then had between the two of you, there came a point, I know you were employed, and you then had to make a decision to either stay employed and sort of keep the business at that level, or give up the employed income, which is a risk, and go full-time into the property. How did you come to that final decision? Because it's quite a jump you took.
Yeah, no, it was quite a jumpy thing. So at that time, I believe my son was 2.5, and work was quite full on. We were doing quite a lot of projects, which we were putting those applications through yourselves, and it got to a stage where I needed to give up one or the other, and I needed to also be around a lot more for my son. So the decision then was quite easy. So I ended up resigning.
But was there a point where your portfolio was a certain level that you knew, yes, it's a risk, but there was a foundation that
I think
you could move on from?
I think realistically, maybe 8 years before, I probably could have given up and lived quite comfortably. But it was quite easy for us to utilize myself and Sanjay's skills, so I could do a lot of the the administration side of the business. Sanjay could turn up to site, and we were working with trusted contractors, so it was easy to balance it out. But it was literally when it got to a stage where we thought, actually, maybe we're on the brink of something special, and we could create something special, but it needs both of us to be full-time.
So obviously, from what you're saying, it clearly helped that there was two of you.
Yeah.
And if it was you on your own or Sanjay on his own, it would have been a lot harder decision to make that leap.
I think so. So having two people, and you can just always bounce the pros and the cons. I find people...
You mean slowing down?
Yeah, slowing down. And I think fear is always in someone's head, so you always have that doubt. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just need someone just to say, look, hold your hand, say, look, I think we can do this.
Yeah.
And that actually gives you that encouragement to go on and actually push ahead. From my experience, just speaking to other people within the industry that we now meet through our own events and other networking events, is everyone's on the brink, but they're not sure when to go full-time, and it's quite a difficult decision.
I think from working with the two of you for a long time, I know that you're more in control of the planning, the room sizes, the measurements, and the legal requirements. How's that grown, and your knowledge? How have you dealt with that over the years?
So what ended up happening was, when we first started with HMOs, we used to have overzealous council officials saying, well, this isn't right, this isn't right. And rather than accepting what their opinion was, I actually looked it up, so I went to the Housing Act and so on, and said, well, under this is actually permitted development, found case laws and so on. And then I actually realized that if you understand every facet of that planning process and what you're allowed to do under permitted development, what's full planning, you can utilize it, find an avenue that others have missed, mm-hmm. and you can actually exploit it to a great degree. An example would be the Burnham site that we did. So this was an office where myself and Sanjay walked around it. I heard many of the other developers that were there on the day. I think there was about 30 people that came to view it. And most of them said you can only get 5 flats within this development. But as you know, and from the Property Investor Awards, we won Commercial Developer of the Year. We basically got 10 flats in that, and we basically quadrupled the value of that property.
Yep, I do, and I'm looking at a picture of it on your the table in front of us. Moving on from that and your strategy over the years, which I've seen evolve, I spoke with Sanjay from buy-to-lets, HMOs to commercial conversions, but you've also embraced the short-term loan as part of the journey on each project, which a lot of people shy away from or scared to use. And I think looking back, it holds back quite a few of the projects that they do.
Yeah, so I had this same fear because the first thing when you look at a bridging loan or a short-term loan is you look at the rate and you think, whoa, that's actually quite expensive. However, you need to look at it in terms of how long do you need that money for? So if you need it for 4 months or 6 months, work it out with that.
Yep.
And then you also need to bear in mind that actually if you take a bridging loan, let's just say in this instance, you go with Shawbrook and you're going to exit with Shawbrook. Shawbrook already have that charge on it. The arrangement fee is actually lower.
Yep.
And you can actually exit within, like we typically do, within a week of getting that mortgage offer. So
you've also got the security that the same value is going back. So it's not going to be someone from a different panel that's going to have a different opinion.
Yeah. So when we actually sped up like 10x, basically what we were doing, it was literally down to the fact that we were using bridging loans. We can move quickly. We can take our money out. If we go down sort of more the traditional methods of what other people may be doing, which is whether it's right or wrong, it actually slows you down and it takes you longer to get your money out. If it takes you longer to get your money out, you can't buy the next project.
Particularly, which is, I'm not sure if people are aware of, particularly in the current market where interest rates are, term rates have gone up, short-term funding hasn't moved.
No.
So they're not that far apart from each other. And then when you add the arrangement fees and the redemption fees into term stuff, it doesn't really, well, I would actually put to a point now it's not any cheaper.
Yeah.
Which is good. So on from that, the commercial to resi conversions that you're now doing, with the planning that's involved, are these longer projects or?
So typically most of the projects that we do, we try to turn them around within sort of a 6-month period. Some of the projects may go over where there's some other elements to it where we require full planning and so on. So, but typically we'll have a project finish within 6 to 12 months. I don't really look at projects that go over that because obviously the market can change, you know, governments can change, interest rates can spiral.
One of the things which you've never really done, and I'd like your opinion on it because everyone's looking for the golden goose deal, is land development. Is there a reason?
We've done some new build projects, but what we find is the planning process you're not really in control of, even if you go meet the planning.
The new builds that you've done are also in conjunction with the property that you own. What I mean by that is you buy a property with a piece of land on the side and split, but you've never physically gone out and just to buy a bit of land on its own. Yeah, so you're maximising a property with land.
That's right. So the reason we don't really look at land development is, one, obviously the process of attaining full planning permission. We focus more on the perimeter development and prior approval. And even when it's prior approval, you've got about a handful of criteria to meet and planning is then granted. With full planning, it goes to consultations and so on. And if it fails, and it's a lengthy process going through the planning inspector and so on. And in that period, you still got loans and outgoings for that land that you've purchased. And the other element is most of those new build projects actually take 18 months and a lot can change within that period, and we quite like certainty.
Yeah, and the way I look at it is you either buy land only and hope you get planning and there's a risk involved, or if it's land with planning already in place, you're probably paying a large premium. So is there profit in it
Yep.
with build costs and so on at the moment?
Well, you just have to look at the current market at the moment. The amount of deals that we get contacted on LinkedIn saying, I've got this bit of land with planning for X amount of apartments or houses or so on, his land shot up through the roof because many of the developers that actually purchased this know that the development's not feasible anymore because you've had a rise in build costs. Obviously, inflation's had an impact in terms of the labour, and the exit value now isn't what people assume because flats are the first that get hit in a downturn.
Yeah, good. So with that in mind, I'm glad you moved on to the market. Where are you looking? How do you feel the market's moving at the moment? Particularly, I know you bought a couple recently at auction. How are you finding all of that?
So from just speaking to people within the market, the industry, like auctioneers, solicitors, brokers, and other developers, they're now seeing more stock coming on the market, which is now leading to a little bit more liquidity within the market. So money is definitely there, looking at the last Allsop commercial results, but the buyers are more savvy in terms of what they're willing to pay. And most people now are looking at multiple exits. So it wasn't just, I'm going to develop this and sell it. So they're looking at, well, if I doesn't sell, am I able to rent it and am I able to exit my bridging finance or development finance? So I think that's the big shift. The other bit that we're actually seeing is a lot of the amateur sort of developers are sort of exiting, and it's now more established developers that have an actual plan on what they're doing that are in the market at the moment.
Excellent. And where do you see the overall market going?
I don't think the fundamentals are going to change, so there's always going to be a shortage of housing. There's going to be a big demand for rental properties. I think Section 24, introduced by George Osborne in the past 6 years or so, has had a massive impact and a massive negative impact on the rental market in terms of landlords have sold up. That stock has now turned to residential. The rental demand has actually increased. So I can see from what Michael Gove has been saying and the NRLA, there's going to be a shift to being a little bit more pro-landlord going forward.
A professional landlord, the
professional
business
landlord,
ones,
right.
not the what they call it, dinner party landlords.
No, 100%.
Yeah. All right. When I sat down with Sanjay, he said you got some future plans lined up.
Yeah.
He wouldn't let anything out the bag. Is there anything that you can tell us that you got in the pipeline?
Well, I think just with anything, what you do is if you're good at one element of a business, so obviously we're quite well known as developers, and as you could probably see from the board behind, we've then ended up creating multiple streams, but it's still around that same element, and I don't think we're slowing down. We've got a couple of ideas in place, which one will complement what we're doing, and then also the clients and stuff that we're working with. We're also looking at maybe just expanding on the event side of our business because we've been blown away with the demand that we have for people wishing to attend our events, and that's actually given us some ideas in terms of how we can work with businesses such as yourself and some of the lenders and others within the industry, and also bring other property people to the likes of yourself that you may not traditionally be able to meet.
And I know one of the other things which we've been able to do, which is get the accreditation for people with no experience to benefit from working with you, with the likes of Shawbrook, Octane, Glenhawk. How have you found all of that?
So yeah, no, that's really good. So for ourselves, we find that during our 2 decades within property, to be successful, you have to solve people's problems. Obviously, we've been doing a lot in terms of creating affordable rental properties for working professionals, but we also saw there was a demand for people who are actually working full time but want to get involved in property but don't have the time available. So we're able to actually procure properties for them in their names, where they'll then benefit from the capital appreciation. Just on that grounds.
I'm just going to throw a question out there to you. Right, and this is just something that sprung to my mind. If you weren't working with Sanjay and you were in your employed job playing with properties and you had the money Would you use Savoys for a project?
No, definitely.
Well, that's the answer you would expect to be given. But because of the lack of experience or time, it would be a scenario where that would have worked for you.
No, I think so. So if I didn't have the experience myself, I would always use someone that did, and you want to leverage it where it's in your favor. What we noticed through now social media, which we're quite active in, is most people say, look, let's JV. Well, JV being you give the developer a bunch of money.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really have a charge on the property.
You've got the other ones where they do a joint venture with joint ownership, but then that can cause problems further down the line.
Yeah, but the majority of the ones are, you give me some money, you can earn and learn, so they'll pay them a fixed amount on the money over a period of time. Whereas what we saw was most of these people would actually like to own that property themselves. So where we don't have a charge or anything on it, they'll then benefit, but our management company can manage that for them because they're quite busy, and that's been working really well over the last 3.5 years since we've set up Savoys.
Okay, that concludes today with Malkit Purewal, co-owner of Savoys Group, and the podcast will be released on all social media outlets, along with, I'm sure, on the Savoys Group social media.